that a lot of people are using, it becomes the top information, but not necessarily the best information, not necessarily the most accurate information. And if we teach that to our students, it will be more powerful than teaching them content or teaching them math or science.
Build those skill sets that we talked about today. I think those are still the most critical skill sets with growth mindset, learning how to learn. All of those things are super, super important, super relevant.
Then we interactive Chromebooks at that time. When we ordered Chromebooks, we used to wait like a year and a half for the delivery to come because people were buying it left and right.
What are some of the steps that you have taken to implement AI in your school? Welcome to the podcast. In a world obsessed with data, grades, and test scores, what are we losing? What is the human cost of an education system? Focused on reporting results rather than building resilient, balanced minds. Today, we are exploring a very different path with a true global citizen and visionary leader. We're joined by John Claude, JC, who has spent this last 16 years as a superintendent of the English Modern School in Qatar, growing it from one small campus into a thriving network. JC, it's an honor to have you here.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me on this podcast. And it will be my pleasure to share my experience with you and listeners.
We would love to start with your discussion with your journey. How did you end up at Qatar? What was something that made you, fascinated towards education? And are those reasons still relevant till today? The reasons why you joined education in the first place?
Thank you for that question. And I have an interesting history to share with you. Basically, the whole teaching career started by default, not by design. I was in University of South Carolina, a mechanical engineer student. I had high grades. I was on the president list, and I was offered a lab assistant job in university while I was studying. My job is to be in the lab preparing equipments for students as they finish the course with a professor. They used to come down to do hands-on experiments about what they have been studying in the classroom. A lot of students reach my lab without knowing what to do. And me knowing what they were studying in the classroom, I had to sit down and explain to them. And a lot of time I used to get the reaction that, JC, in 5 minutes, you were able to pass information that the professor has been talking about in 2 weeks. So with time, I enjoyed the reaction of people when they understand, and you can see that light bulb comes on. It's amazing feeling. And two, I realized that I have that talent in me. And I decided to become a teacher. I was on the president list. My GPA was 3.98. Everybody made fun of me. It was like, JC, mechanical engineers make 80,000. That was way back in 1994. Make 80,000 a year while teachers make 20,000 a year. You're going to leave the engineering to go for teaching. But I found my passion and I did make that decision. So with that in mind, I decided to become a teacher. I got my bachelor degree in science, my master's degree in education. Then I got my principal certification. I can honestly tell you that was the best decision I've done in my life, because I come to work every single morning knowing that I'm going to have fun. I'm not going to a job. I'm going to do something I really enjoy with all my heart. And maybe that's one of the reasons, because I'm passionate about what I do. I succeeded over the years. Currently, I am a superintendent of network of 5 schools, a nursery, and a university. Also, I'm an adjunct professor for education master degree students with Buffalo State University of New York. I'm a recipient of Richard J. Bradley Award for 2020. It's a one award given through New England Association of Schools and Colleges from the United States across the globe. I was a recipient of that award in 2020. Then in 2021, I was invited to become the commissioner for the Commission of International Education in the United States. And in 2024, I was invited to become a board at-large member with the New England Association of Schools and Colleges, which is one of the biggest accreditation and most prestigious accreditation worldwide. So all that, I'm not telling you to show off, but I'm telling you to share with you to what extent I'm engaged in education and passionate about education from a learner point of view, from a teacher point of view, and from an administrator point of view.
One of the first things which you said, and the awards and the accolades they've received, it shows the fact that when you're having fun, you're going to do a lot more versus when you're not having fun. Because I think you still have that passion and enthusiasm about it, say when you started your career back in '94. So it's amazing to see that.
Thank you. Thank you, Manik.
And one of the things which we had a discussion on before we started this podcast was teaching students and not curriculum. It's something, one of the most beautiful single phrases that I have heard, in the sense of what is the biggest mistakes that and that's my question going to look like. What's the biggest mistakes that schools make when they're prioritizing curriculum, when they're prioritizing that, then understanding where the students lie, and how do we shift that focus?
I always tell my children, only if I can change that world, I will make those changes immediately. The problem is, and it's an excuse used in our part of the world more than anywhere else, when you talk to teachers and they always tell you, I have a curriculum to finish. And it makes me stop and think. I always remind myself that students come to school for one reason and one reason only: to learn and grow. That's it.
Yeah.
That's the only reason parents send their children to school, is to learn and grow. Unfortunately, schools system has changed over the years, and it became a place where kids are learning, but at the same time they are being judged. When I say the word being judged, is like uh, being taught a curriculum and tested regularly to see where they are on that curriculum. There's nothing wrong with that assessment, but we cannot keep taking the curriculum and driving it and make it the driver of the learning process. Because if you keep moving forward, trying to finish a curriculum within a year, a lot of students will be left behind. And that is the fact. That's what's happening today. There are a lot of students, we finished the year, and unfortunately, the language used in schools or some education institution, we say the student failed.
Yeah.
And that word should not exist in a learning world. You go to the word to learn, there is no such a thing as failing. There's only where you are in your learning journey, where you are in this process. So that's why I always remind my teachers when I do training in my university students or in the school teachers, that always remember, it's not the curriculum that you're teaching, you are teaching students. And those students are individuals with different needs. They are in different places in that within that curriculum. And that's why in schools we create what's called the vertical alignment of the curriculum. That means from KG1 all the way to grade 12, what the students sequentially need to learn. And then what we do is we try to identify where each student is on that scaffolding or on that scale, and that will become your baseline, that will become your starting point, and then you start build on top of that to make sure that that student is progressing. So the reporting will become a progress report showing progress, not to tell me where the student is if he failed or passed. So the language need to be changed and the education system need to be revised from that perspective.
When you look at from a student perspective, right, like, and you're saying how we need to change it, and I'm going to go a little bit more in depth of an individual learner, because what we've noticed is someone can be at a grade 6 but might still be reading at a grade 3 level, and that can happen. And it could just not be reading, it could be maths, it could be other subjects where they may have entered a different grade, they have got the passing marks that's required to move grade on grade, but their learning ability is still below. Or so how do you build that student centered culture? Do you look at it from a teacher perspective? Do you look at it from a student perspective? How do you change that system?
It is a culture that you need to build. And I'm not going to only use your example. I'm going to use another example that you could have a student in year 6, but is at grade 9 level, reading level. So it could be from both ends of the spectrum. It's a culture that we need to build in schools. And that culture in our school, we initiated a new culture in our school. We call it the growth mindset. Growth mindset, that means students take the initiative of trying something, making mistakes, learning from their mistakes, reflecting on them, and moving forward and improving. And within the growth mindset mentality or culture, there is something called the power of yet. That means when a student cannot answer a question, instead of telling that student you failed or you did not pass the exam, the students will look at you and say, I don't know it yet, which means automatically he is in the mindset that I'm going to go and learn it and I'm going to come back and answer that question. So that's why, having a reflective environment, that means students create, or the whole school, teachers, students, adults, parents, we create a culture that it's okay to make mistake. On the contrary, mistakes are experiences, and experienced person mean a person who made a lot of mistakes, learned from them, and that's why he is successful today. And that's why, when I go and I hire an experienced administrator, that means that is an administrator who made a lot of mistakes in his life, and now he's going to save me money by not making those mistakes in my school, by compared to hiring somebody who's not experienced. So making mistakes, there's nothing wrong with it. And that's why creating a culture of a growth mindset will be essential, where people are encouraged to take initiative, make mistakes, try new things, be innovative, be creative. And then things might work and things might not work. And then we stop and we reflect and we ask the question, what is it that I can do differently to make it work and may have a better outcome? So automatically now you are growing, and you are moving forward and you are progressing. This is the culture that is needed in the education world to ensure that students, one, enjoy learning. Two, you remove the anxiety factor, because now if you don't grade them, there is no anxiety anymore. Making mistake is exciting. And like Edison, who created the light bulb, he said, I did not fail 1,000 times, but I discovered 10,000 methods that didn't work. And now finally I found the method that works. That's what learning is all about.
And I love the growth mindset. I love the fact that mistakes have to be cherished and resilience gets built in. And that doesn't always happen when we look at traditional grading. Because when we put it, A, B, C, D, F, it kind of is a bit of a destructive and it does not always allow growth mindset to fluster because assessment is based on that. So how do you change the assessment as a system? Or have you thought
I
of
like that.
another way?
Absolutely. And I'm going to share with you a personal experience here. When I am from Lebanon, I'm Lebanese. And when I moved to the United States, I came from a French system. I did not speak a word of English. I only spoke French and Arabic. So when I arrived to University of Georgia, I was in an English program to learn English. And just imagine a student, international student. I wasn't the only one. There were about 50 of us, students from around the world who are here just to learn the English language to prepare us to go to university. So after 3 months, I passed the TOEFL exam. So I reached a point where my English command is good enough to enter university, but not good enough to be able to cope with the English aspect of reading and writing and fully understand and express myself. I was 19 years old, so probably that will shock you when people realize I only spoke English when at the age of 19. There was like, you're very good for somebody who learned English at a later stage, which proved my point. If you implement the growth mindset, there is never an age or a criteria that define what you can or cannot do, as long as you have the mindset that I'm going to do it. Not yet, but I'm doing it. So what happened is, I remember I was enrolled in a class called English 100, which is right before English 101. And the teacher gave us an assignment. I'll never forget that. It says the impact or the effect of on what is the impact on us being bombarded by news on a daily basis, something in that context. Me coming from my background, coming from Lebanon, civil war and everything else, that is something that I lived every day and I can express, I can talk about it. So I took the pen and paper back then, you're talking 1989 or 1988. And I started writing, everything I can think of. I wrote about 6 or 7 pages. I submitted the paper. That paper came back to me. It looked like there's a massacre, red, filled with mistakes, and with the letter F on top. I failed. And the teacher looked at me, she said, you have to revise your paper. That's not good. Your English, your writing skills are not up to standard. And you made a lot of mistakes, JC, and I don't have a choice but to give you the F. But she gave me the chance to go back and rewrite the paper. Now, here is the powerful message. What do you think I did when she asked me to rewrite it? Automatically, I moved from six pages long paper to 1 or 1.5 pages long paper. Why? Because I knew if I'm going to make mistakes, I'm going to be judged. So the less I write, the less mistakes I make. The less mistakes I make, the more grades I have. So what did the grading do? It killed my ability to express myself freely, to be creative and innovative. So I believe the education system, when you grade somebody, automatically their aim in their mind will be operated in a way that my aim is to maximize my grade, not to express my learning. And that's why the grading kills creativity in education. And up to this day, like I said at the beginning, if I can change the world, the first thing I will do, I'll remove grading exams and reports from schools, definitely. Why would we want to grade exams? What the grade is for? We'll give an exam, we correct it, we identify the mistakes, then we give it back to the students to learn from it. So grading kills innovation, and I believe the grading should be removed. In parallel to that, when I reached English 102 class, by that time my English language command has improved a lot. Living in the United States, interacting with English-speaking people, taking classes, improved a lot. So what happened is, I'll never forget that I had a teacher who the day one, I remember, gave us a tape. That was at the University of South Carolina. It was the soul cages of the singer Sting. And he gave us that tape. He said, inside that tape, there are 10 songs. We have 10 weeks. Each week, I'm gonna ask you to listen to the song and write a paper about it. And it was amazing. It was amazing. Like I listen during those tapes, you rewind, you fast forward, and you try to understand the word and you write the lyrics and then try to understand the context around why that song was written. What is he trying to say? The poetry behind it. I believe that was an amazing course that allowed me to express myself without being judged. And he always graded the content, not the structure. There was a grade on structure. I did not get an A on every paper. I got a C. But I knew why I lost the B and an A, because of my English wasn't great enough, but the idea was powerful. So he gave me grades for the idea itself. And that allowed me, that showed me as an educator to tell me that how we can approach education in a way to allow students, one, to express themselves, two, to drive their own learning, express their learning in their own way. Because students, they know the concept, but they don't know how to express it. So they fail an exam, but doesn't mean the grade reflect their knowledge in that subject. No, the grade doesn't reflect their capacity, their capability, or their knowledge in the subject.
I absolutely understand where you're coming in from, because it's more about reporting and learning than just grading. But when you curtail the creativity, when you curtail the innovation, there's an argument that comes across that grading is the way that we can know where the students are at. How do we figure out where is who? Do we do a conversation with them? Okay, and this is hypothetical conversation now that I'm going into, because we have grades and we have the structure. But if we could change it and we could adopt something else that would still tell us where each student is at, so that, because one of the reasons why grades are there is when you go for a college or when you are applying for a job, you can judge, hey, this kid stopped his university, was doing exceedingly well, versus this kid does not understand the fundamentals, or is lacking here or there. So how do we figure that piece out? So how would we do the grading?
I will answer your questions, but first I'm gonna ask you a question. When you were in school, I am sure you had a lot of friends that they were achieving top grades, and you had friends who were not achieving top grades. My question to you now is, all your friends who achieved top grades succeeded in life, and all the friends who did not achieve top grades failed in life?
No. I did not
No.
achieve top grades.
And look at you now. I think you are a very successful person. So to answer your question, grades do not define us. Okay. And we have to admit that. And we have the historical facts and data to support that grades do not define our ability or capacity. Grades are designed in a box-like education system because we want to measure things, and not we as educators, somebody out there, ministries, communities, society, university. They're trying to measure things and trying to fit people in boxes. One time I saw on social media picture in Japan that they put a square box around a watermelon when it's small. So when the watermelon grows, it grows in the shape of a cube. So when they load them on a truck, they can fit more watermelon in a truck as compared to a spherical shaped watermelon. And we're trying at the education system today to do the same thing. We're trying to create boxes for students so we can fit them in something, universities, society, and so on. And that needs to stop because it's killing the education system. The education system need to be free, need to be innovative, need to be creative. Now, to answer your question, how do we measure it though? But we need some measuring tool to tell students where they are on a certain scale of learning. And that is a great question. We know what in education, we have something called standards or learning objectives. We know what students are learning according to their age level when the education system based on the curriculum. We know what they should know and able to do at each age level. So what we do is we test the students and we tell them, listen, in reading comprehension, you are 10 years old, but your reading comprehension shows that you are at 6 year old level, while your writing abilities are at 12 years old. So basically, you put them on a scale, and that's why today there's something called adaptive testing. The adaptive testing is a test that is, as you answer question, if you answer them correctly, the questions become more and more difficult. And if you answer them wrong, it will give you an easier question, and it keep fluctuating up and down until you reach almost a flat line to tell you this is your ability, this is the level you are in. It's not 100% accurate, but it's pretty accurate. It will tell me as an educator what are the strengths and weaknesses of that student, because my aim as an educator is to identify, based on the learning standards, what is the ability of that student, and use the strength area to capitalize on it and make it even better, and then look at their weak area and work on it more to be able to improve it so they can excel on that. And this is, again, it goes back to the growth mindset, and it goes back to neuroplasticity and neurogenesis. I don't know if you want to jump to that now, or I will let you ask questions because we need to talk about that.
100%. I think you've absolutely got it correct. And it's something which we discussed that we wanted to discuss, teaching to the both sides of the brain. Where, and I'm going to start with giving an example, right? Like someone who's great at math and someone who's great at artistic culture, be it art, be it music, be it sports. How do we bring those two, where the one who's great at maths and like science and STEM come towards art side and understand why that's important and build things out, and from the art side can understand what maths looks like and the reason why we do this, and how do we work on that?
See, unfortunately, worldwide, I mean, some countries evolve beyond that point, but not many.
Yeah.
We still have the mentality: you're good in math, you go to engineering. You're good in science, you go to medical school. You're good in art, you go to humanities and art, and so on. And unfortunately, that separation sometimes happen in some schools at grade 7, grade 6, and some of them at grade 9 level when they reach high school, and so on. So they kind of like direct student to an area of strength. I am totally against that, and I believe it should be the total opposite, and I'll tell you why.
Yeah.
Because We as a human, scientifically speaking, we have certain area in our brain more developed than other areas. And this is due to our genes, parents, grandparents, great-grandparents, and so on. Because at some point, whatever our grandparents, the genes that we carry from them, whatever they were engaged in, they have developed a certain area of the brain and they gave it to us. So we inherited that. That is something we're born with. And that's why at young age, you see some kids and athletes, they're more advanced than others. And some kids in mathematical skills, they're more advanced than others. And the list can go on. But then, scientifically speaking as well, we have something that is called neuroplasticity and neurogenesis, which mean the brain will continue to grow. And the brain will only grow in areas that you are actually forcing the brain to use. That means those neurons will grow. If I'm not good in math, that means the neurons are not as developed in that area in my brain. So what do I need to develop it? I need to do more math. Unfortunately, the education system, they move you away from it. I was like, oh, he's suffering in math, so let's give him more art or humanity or social study or whatever it is, or languages. No, it should be the opposite. Our aim is to grow the brain. And when the left side and the right side of the brain, they work together, that's when you become a genius. That's when you become able to achieve a lot more and drive your own learning and be a critical thinker that can change the world. And that's what we want. We want our graduates to be those people. So that's why, we have to change that mindset and start thinking in a way that if a child is weak in math, you work with him more math, which means that's the aim of the homework. And that's why, again, unfortunately, some school, they still correct homework and put a grade on the homework. No, because if he cannot do the homework, you need to know that you don't want him to bring a tutor at home to do the homework for him. The homework is only to give you an indication of the capacity or capability of that student in that specific subject. And then if he cannot do it, then you give him an easier homework. You go back to the basic and you scaffold it and you start working with that student to grow. And that's why, teaching to both sides of the brain, that means whichever area of the brain is underdeveloped, you need to focus on it and develop it. And the area that is developed, well, you use it and you challenge it more. That means now you can go to a higher level thinking in that area and challenge that students to develop it some more. We should never move away from any subject. This mentality of moving away from one subject and take scientific stream or mathematics stream or social studies stream or a humanities stream, that need to stop. And again, this is the power of holistic approach to education. And unfortunately, a lot of countries and a lot of education institutions don't realize the importance of physical education, the importance of art, the importance of music, the importance of social interaction, and not only the importance of numeracy and literacy in science. Because a lot of schools, they still focus on math, science, languages, and ignore everything else. If you think you're building resilient, learners that way, you're absolutely wrong. You're not. You're not helping the students to be successful in life. Schools should be preparing individuals to be successful individuals in life. And in order to do that, that student need to be developing in every aspect of cognitive ability in their mind, as well as physical ability, as well as social ability. That's why they all are just as important to have a well-rounded individual to be a successful citizen, to be a successful employee, to be a successful husband or wife, to be a successful father, to be successful in every aspect of life.
And I think one of the things, there were so many different wisdoms, if I have to say so, in this conversation, specifically coming in from neuroplasticity of how things grow and how we look at strength and how we look at weaknesses and how we want to expand our brains. We also look at different areas that we don't work on. And and I agree with you on two fronts. I agree on the fact that sometimes letting kids choose their own credits, their own systems, and pushing them towards things which they're already good at and pushing them away from things they're not might be counterintuitive and might not really work, because for us to do hard things we have to be in front of that, because life is full of things which where we have to do end up doing things which we don't want to do. It's
Absolutely.
and it is important for us to have build that mindset, build a resilience. I wish there was a way. Have you ever thought of if there was a way that we can judge, or like we can figure out how resilient a student is, or we can measure outcomes? Because these are skills which are softer skills. These are not skills which, you know, it's not maths. It's not, hey, you know this concept or you don't know this concept. Resilience, great growth mindset, all of these skill sets are super important, super relevant. I think even the most important skill set to exist right now. Uh, how do you have you ever thought of if you could measure it?
Absolutely. All the time. All the time. But the question is, why would you want to measure it? It's sad that we always want to measure things. And I'll give you an example. I was having a conversation with a group of people who are not educators. And non-educators usually, especially business people in the business world, they want to measure things. They want to, like, for example, they want to see that improvement. In order to show improvement, you need to show numbers, graphs, measure things and show and present it. And one time I asked a gentleman a question. I said, are you a dad? And he said, yes. I said, do you have a son or daughter? He said, I have only one son. I said, great. When your son was born, on a scale from 1 to 10, how much did you love him? He goes, definitely 10. I said, fantastic. How old is your son now? He said, 21. I said, from scale to 1 to 10, how much do you love your son now? He said, 10. So I said, over 21 years, your love to your son did not increase at all. It was a 10 and it's still a 10. The point I'm trying to make is there are certain things in life you kill it by measuring it. You cannot measure it. You just have to accept it and you go with it, knowing that it's improving, knowing it's growing, knowing that your approach to education is helping the individual to grow. And that individual is becoming better every single day because he is following the power of yet. When he cannot do something, he will look at you and say, I cannot do it yet. Automatically in his mind, he knows that now I have to learn how to do it. So you're improving continuously. Now, if I want to go back and answer your question to be more specific, can we measure it? Yes, we can, but we only can measure certain things. But can we really measure that student? Can I look at you and say, this student is going to be a president one day, or this student is going to be a scientist one day? I don't think anybody can do that. But we know when we look at an individual that he is a well-rounded individual. He can speak well, he can present well, he can express himself well, and he can interact with other people well, he can collaborate well, he can reflect well, he can criticize well, especially today in an advanced technological era that we live in. The students are bombarded. I mean, when I was a student, when I was 10 years old, I used to have a science magazine that was published once a month, and my parents used to buy it for me, and I used to sit down and read it. And for a month, I used to read it from cover to cover 10 times because that's the only resource I had. While today's students, they have access to indefinite amount of information with their phones, with their technology. So our job now is to teach those students how to be a critical thinkers, a critical leaders, being able to choose and decide if the information they are reading are accurate or not, true or not, and especially with AI, because AI is built around an algorithm that will give you the information that people use the most. I mean, if there is something out there that a lot of people are using, it becomes the top information, but not necessarily the best information, not necessarily the most accurate information. And if we teach that to our students, it will be more powerful than teaching them content or teaching them math or science. You need to teach them how to teach themselves, how to be critical thinkers, and how to analyze it and how to report back on their critical approach that they've done to whatever they are being exposed to. And that's why, measuring can be done, but it's with a limited approach, but it can never measure the holistic ability of a human being. Because if you have an autistic child who is nonverbal, but have an amazing mathematical skills in their brain, and if they are nonverbal, how are they going to express it to you? How are you going to measure it? You ask questions, he's not going to answer you. But when you see him in action, you'll see that they are capable of doing amazing things. So stop the measuring and focus on the learning.
Thank you so much. I think this has been super insightful. Before we let you go, though, I have one final question, and it's something we do it as a tradition. We ask the previous podcast leader to leave a question for the next one. And the person asked us was that what are some of the steps that you have taken to implement AI in your school and the whole network of schools and colleges, because it's everywhere. And where did you start?
In our network, I mean, if you look at our website, you will see that we are a Google reference school. And I do not want to take the credit for that. I don't think it happened by design. It happened by default, and I'll tell you why. At one point in our schools, we decided, because we are called English modern schools, so there should be something modern about our approach to education. So we decided, at one point we had the mentality that being modern means being technologically advanced and having technology at the fingertip of the students and teachers. So we put interactive boards in every classroom in our schools. And we had the Wi-Fi and connection to internet across the network. That was way back 10 years, 15 years ago. And we were excited about that. But then we realized that we made a big mistake. And that mistake was to have an interactive board in the classroom. That means the teacher need to stand in the front, because interactive board, you need to touch it with your finger. That means automatically the teacher has to stand in the front, which is we don't want. We want our classes to be more engaging. We want active learners, not passive learners. We don't want the teachers to stand in the front. So we realized that interactive board created a problem. So then I tasked my IT department. I said, give me a solution for that. I don't want the teacher to keep standing in the front. So then they came back to me about 5-6 years ago, and they said, listen, we can buy Chromebook. They're pretty cheap, reasonably priced. We can download the books on it, and the Chromebook, we can flip it, becomes an interactive pads, which could be connected to the board, so the teacher can carry it, walk around the class, work with the students in groups, and as well, administer the interactive board. I said, what a brilliant idea. Let's do that. So then we interactive Chromebooks. At that time, when you order Chromebooks, you used to wait like a year and a half for the delivery to come, because people were buying it left and right. So the Chromebooks arrived to our school in 2020, February. It was right a week or two before the closure of schools due to COVID. But during that time, when we ordered the Chromebook, we forced all our teachers to go and become certified on Google level 1 and level 2 and so on. So our teachers are learning, and the Chromebooks were arriving. They arrived, and we were the first school probably fully ready to go online. The students had Chromebooks, the teachers had Chromebooks, the teachers are trained to go online and use. So that was amazing. So that put us about 10 steps ahead of everybody else. But to answer your question, so that happened. I don't know if we should take credit for it, that we were ready for COVID. No, it happened. It was coincidental, but there was a lot of design and wisdom behind it, why it happened that way. Then when AI hit, I remember the immediate reaction was block it, because automatically the English teacher don't want kids to have AI writing the thesis for the students. That was the immediate reaction of every educator. We had to stop and reflect. I was like, listen, we cannot fight the world. The world is moving forward. The future of those students sitting in the classroom, we have no idea what it looks like. But I know one thing for sure, AI is going to be part of it. So we cannot deprive those students from using it properly. So the first thing we did is we create AI ethics policy. That means we need to create the ethics about how to use AI. And I think if we guide the students, and that's why, if you look at the New England Association of Schools and Colleges at the bottom of the website, click on policy, and the very first policy you will see there is AI ethics and utilization. And basically, if we create the framework for students, we share it with the students, how to use AI properly and what can we use AI for. Because unfortunately, a lot of people still use AI as a research tool. No, it's not a research tool. AI can do a lot more than that. And AI, like I said earlier, AI will share with you the information that are used mostly, not necessarily the best information. And that's why, if we are smart, we'll be able to use AI to our benefit to give us the most or best outcome possible in any scenario. Now, a lot of parents are fighting us for it. It was like students are sitting in front of screen too long and they lost their skills of writing with a pen on a paper and they lost this. And I agree with that, but we cannot live in an era that it is not our era, and we cannot prepare our students to our past. We need to prepare them for their future. Yeah. And usually the example I use, and I want to close with that, I tell them, what do you think somebody who lived in the Pharaoh's time in Egypt, when they used to carve hieroglyphic on a stone, what do you think that person thought of the person who was writing on a papyrus? And then the person who wrote on a papyrus, what do you think he thought when he saw somebody using a typewriter? And the person who with a typewriter, what do you think he thought about the person who was typing on a computer? And you tell him, and he'll ask you, where's my paper? You tell him it's saved on a hard drive and I can retrieve it anytime I want to, while the other guy can see it in front of him. And the person who was saving a document on a hard drive, all of a sudden now is being exposed to somebody telling, I'm saving on the cloud. It's not even on a hard drive. You cannot even see it. And that list can go on. I don't think any era can accept what's coming next because they don't know it. They're scared of it. But we have to endorse it. It's the future. As long as we teach our students the ethics of using it and how to maximize outcome by using it, I think we are helping them to be more successful and ready for their future.
Thank you so much. I agree with you. I think AI is here to stay. I think from a previous era standpoint, education needs to look of how do we prepare for the future. It's always about the future, never about the past. And if we can all look forward towards what's happening, build those skill sets that we talked about today. I think those are still the most critical skill sets, with growth mindset, with learning how to learn. All of those things are super, super important, super relevant. And yeah, it has been an absolutely delight to host you and have this conversation.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you. And I want to thank you for this opportunity. And I hope whoever listened to that message will be impacted and influenced by it and be a change agent for the future, because we have to make those changes.
I absolutely think so.
Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in. For more information about TomoClub, visit TomoClub or follow us on our socials. Stay curious, keep learning, and we'll see you next time.